All right, buckle up, everybody, because we are diving headfirst into a world of, well, let's just say over-the-top action, poses you wouldn't believe, and memes. Memes everywhere. We're talking JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, folks.
It really is something, isn't it? JoJo's, I mean. It's been around forever, it feels like.
Decades.
Decades, yeah. And still going strong. Which, honestly, for manga and anime, it's incredible. The landscape is constantly changing. But JoJo's, it just keeps captivating audiences. It's fascinating, and that's what we're going to unpack today.
It is. So to do that, we've got two main sources. One is, well, this Japanese article. And it's all about the quotes. You know, those iconic JoJo lines. They analyze them, the context, why they became so popular. And then, well, we also have the trusty Wikipedia, right?
Always. Gives us the big picture, the plot, themes, the whole shebang. Even how JoJo's has influenced other creative stuff, which is pretty wild.
It is. Well, it's a good word. So whether you're, like, prepping for a JoJo watch party, finally giving in and watching, or just wondering why the internet's obsessed with these poses.
And these memes.
Right, exactly, the memes. This is your deep dive. We're figuring out what makes this series tick.
Yeah.
You know, why do people quote it constantly? And how is it, like, seeped into everything else? First things first, though, JoJo's. It's not your typical long-running manga, right? I mean, it spans generations.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of its DNA. It's this whole Joestar family saga. Instead of sticking with, one main character, we follow the bloodline. Each part has a new descendant, and they're all L, called JoJo.
So it's always fresh, right? New settings, new themes, villains. That's got to be part of why it's lasted so long. How else do you keep a series going for decades?
Right. And it's more than just one continuous story. It's a universe. Like Araki, the creator, gets to explore different time periods. We have 19th century England, modern Japan, all of sorts of eras. Each one has its own flavor.
Keeps it exciting. I mean, you never know what you're going to get next. It's not just the story, though. The way they, fight, that changes too. We start with Hammond, right?
Hammond, or the ripple. It's all about breathing techniques, channeling solar energy, very martial arts focused.
Right. But then, bam, we get stands.
Part 3, yeah. Huge shift. These stands, they're like psychic projections with unique powers. Everything becomes way more visual, the battle's more complex, strategic. The Wikipedia article mentions that Araki wanted to change up the combat system. Stands were the perfect answer.
Oh, it wasn't just about being flashy, though. What makes stands really cool is they reflect the user's personality. So, the fights get this whole psychological layer.
Exactly. It's not just strength versus strength. It's about knowing your opponent, their weaknesses. Sometimes a fight is won before it even begins. And the Japanese article points out a fascinating recurring thing. A lot of the villains, they have stands that mess with time.
Oh, yeah. It's like Araki loves to throw a wrench in there. Makes it a real challenge for the Joestars, right?
Big time. I mean, we talk about raising the stakes. You're not just facing a powerful opponent.
Yeah.
You're fighting against time itself.
Which I guess plays into that whole human spirit overcoming adversity thing.
Absolutely. And speaking of memorable moments, we have to talk about the quotes. JoJo's. It's basically an internet meme factory. This Japanese article we have, it digs into why some lines became so popular.
You read them with context and it's hilarious. Just the sheer absurdity. But it works.
It does. It's part of the charm. Take Dio. That line, do you remember how many loaves of bread you've eaten in your life? Seems random, right?
Totally.
But it shows how little he values human life. Makes him both terrifying and kind of funny.
Yeah. You don't know whether to laugh or run.
Exactly. Then you have Jotaro and his yer days, usually translated as good grief.
Simple, but it totally captures him. The guy is constantly surrounded by craziness and he's just done.
Perfectly sums up his personality. Oh, and we can't forget Kishibe Rohan, the manga artist. His "But I Refuse," it speaks volumes, shows how strong-willed he is, dedicated to his art.
And that comes up a lot, actually. He has his own spin-off series. And that stubbornness, it's a huge part of it. It's interesting how even the side characters, they've got such conviction.
That's Araki for you. Everyone, even those not directly in the Joestar line, they've got depth. But the quotes, you're right, they capture so much. The drama, the humor, the fact that these characters are larger than life.
That's why they work so well as memes. Catchy, quotable, recognizable. Each one is like a little snippet of JoJo's,
Perfectly said. And speaking of capturing the essence of JoJo's, the visual style, this is something the Wikipedia article really delves into. I mean, we have to talk about the JoJo poses.
Oh, yeah, they're legendary. All those dynamic, sometimes impossible-looking stances, it's iconic.
And they're not random. Araki takes inspiration from classical sculptures, which, gives the characters this instant recognizability. Like you see a JoJo pose, you know.
And then beyond the poses,
Yeah.
the colors, so vibrant. He cites artists like Paul Gauguin as influences. It's bold, it's not realistic at all, but it works.
It creates this whole visual language unique to JoJo's.
And the fashion, oh my goodness. We've got high-end brands mixed with the most outlandish stuff. Every character, they have a look. It's not just clothes, it's part of their personality.
It all contributes to the JoJo's brand. And, that strong visual identity, it's part of why the series has been so influential. The Wikipedia article, it lists all these creators, from manga artists to musicians who say JoJo's inspired them.
Even Western TV shows, it's crazy to think about. Like this manga, which started fairly niche, it's left its mark everywhere.
It is. It shows you originality, a strong vision. It can go a long way. But there's something else, too, beyond the looks and the fights. The Japanese article touches on this. JoJo's celebrates the human spirit, even against impossible odds.
Pushing limits, making tough choices. This idea of passing on your will, even if you lose, that's considered a victory in itself.
Powerful stuff. We see it time and again, like Jotaro, his stand, Star Platinum, he inherited that from Jonathan, his great-great-grandfather.
It's that lineage, and the sacrifices they made to protect the people they care about. It's a mix of loss and incredible resilience, which I think makes it really emotional.
It's this whole cocktail, right? Action, humor, genuine emotion. But one thing that really struck me, and JoJo's does this well, the characters, they're not always just good or bad. There's nuance. A lot of moral gray areas, actually.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, even the villains, a lot of times, they have these really complex backstories.
Yeah.
You kind of get why they are the way they are.
Exactly. It makes their battles with the Joestars that much more interesting. Like, take Dio. He's the villain, right?
Yeah.
The big bad. But his story, it's actually kind of tragic. He came from nothing, wanted to rise above. Power became his obsession.
Makes you think, right? What pushes someone that far? And the Joestars themselves, I mean, they're not perfect either. Each one, they have their quirks, their own struggles. It's not all sunshine and roses.
And that's what makes them relatable. They're human. Make mistakes, learn, grow. It's how the generational thing works so well. Keeps you invested.
For sure. Like, take Jotaro. Everyone sees him as this, the cool, stoic guy. But he's also stubborn, reckless sometimes. And yet he'll go to the ends of the earth to save his mom from a centuries-old vampire. Talk about family loyalty.
Right. And it's not just the characters on their own, it's the relationships between them. Some of them you don't see coming, but they work so well. Jonathan and Speedwagon, back in part 1, or Joseph and Caesar, part 2. Hilariously funny, but also their bond, it's genuine.
Oh, man, Joseph and Caesar, that one, it gets me every time. Their rivalry, then they become best buds.
Yeah.
And then Caesar's sacrifice, it's heartbreaking.
Ugh, I know. And that brings up something else that JoJo's does so well. The deaths. They're not just, throwaway things to move the plot along. They mean something.
Yeah, there's impact. You feel it when a character dies, whether it's heroic or just tragic.
Exactly. It's because Araki, he doesn't shy away from showing the consequences. These fights, people put their lives on the line, and sometimes they don't make it. Adds a whole layer of, reality to it. It's not just fun and games.
Makes the victories that much more satisfying, though. Yeah. Right. And the losses, yeah, they hit hard. It's a good balance, I think.
Definitely. And it all ties back into that human spirit thing. The Joestars, they grieve, but they pick themselves up. They keep going because of those who came before them. This legacy of courage, fighting for what's right. It's a powerful cycle.
It is. But it's not just the characters themselves doing the fighting. The world of JoJo's is a character in itself. It's so bizarre. Every part takes us someplace new, and it's always so distinct.
The settings are incredible, aren't they? From Gothic English mansions to sunny Italy, bustling Tokyo, the American wilderness. It's all over the place.
And Araki, he puts so much detail into it. Like, you can tell he draws from his own travels, history, culture. It feels real, even when it's totally out there.
Right. You really feel like you're traveling with the character, seeing all this craziness firsthand. It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's the journey.
And the surprises. You never know what's around the corner. A new stand with some crazy ability, or the Joestars getting into some ridiculous situation. Keeps you on your toes.
It's fantastic pacing. You think you know where the story is going, and then boom, Araki throws a curveball, a new power, a twist, an enemy you didn't expect.
Keeps it fresh, right?
Yep.
Even after all these years. And this constant innovation is not just in the story itself. It's how the fans engage with JoJo's. Like, we can't talk about it without talking about the memes.
It's internet gold, JoJo's is. The poses, the dramatic lines, the over-the-top expressions, they're everywhere. People are doing JoJo poses in real life, remixing sound effects into music.
It's taken on a life of its own online, which honestly has probably introduced this series to a lot of new people, even if you haven't seen it, a year days when you hear it.
It's become part of internet culture almost through osmosis, which, it's pretty impressive.
It is. It's like JoJo's is more than just a manga or an anime at this point. It's, I don't know, a cultural touchstone.
Meme factory. Definitely that. But you're right, it's more. And it speaks to the power of a strong vision, to take something unique and turn it into a global phenomenon. It's inspiring, honestly.
It really is. And what's cool is the fan community, it's so diverse. Artists, musicians, cosplayers, gamers, they're all drawn to this world. And it's become a truly global thing, which, we often think of manga and anime as, very Japanese. But JoJo's has broken out of that.
It's like Araki tapped into something universal that resonates no matter who you are, where you're from, but it's not like he hides the Japanese roots either.
Right, and what's interesting is, it's rooted in Japanese culture, but then it brings in all these Western influences too, the music references, the art style inspired by European artists. It's a mix.
It's a blend, absolutely.
Yeah.
Eastern and Western aesthetics, storytelling techniques, all mashed together.
Yeah, it's like this global melting pot of ideas, and nowhere is that more obvious than in the art. Like you can see it in those poses we talked about.
Oh, definitely. It's not just like, oh, that looks cool, though it does. Araki, he directly references stuff. Classical sculptures, Renaissance paintings, even fashion photography. He takes it all in, mixes it up, and makes it his own.
So he's created this new style.
Mm.
Something that's instantly recognizable as JoJo's, which I think helps it appeal to so many people. It's got that manga energy, but it's also, easy to get into even if you're not super familiar with all that.
Right. It bridges the gap. You see something familiar, but also it's totally different from anything you've seen before. It's kind of the power of art in general, I think, to go beyond language and connect with people.
Finding those universal things, right?
Uh-huh.
Emotions, stories that everyone can relate to no matter where you're from. And JoJo's does that well, especially with that core theme, celebrating the human spirit.
It's about facing hardship, but not giving up. Being yourself, fighting for what you believe in, even when it seems impossible. And it does all that with style, with humor. It's not just some heavy message being shoved down your throat.
Yeah, it's all part of the package. The crazy adventures, the characters, this world where anything can happen. It's just fun.
And I think that's why JoJo's keeps attracting new fans. It's not stuck in the past. It changes, tries new things with the storytelling. But the core of it, that stays the same. The themes, the visual style, that belief in the human spirit, it's powerful.
It really is. So, I think we could say this, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's way more than just a manga or an anime. It's this whole thing, a phenomenon. It inspires people. It's a meme machine. It shows you what happens when you have creativity, passion, and, well, a bit of that bizarre flair.
Absolutely. And, it leaves us with a question, something to ponder. If you are a stand user, what would your ability be? What would best represent you?
Well, that's a good one. I like that. Might get some creative juices flowing. Maybe even inspire some stand designs. Who knows? But yeah, whether you're a longtime fan or you're just starting to explore the world of JoJo's, we hope this deep dive is giving you some things to think about. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.